I never thought an ordinary, quiet afternoon in my overstuffed workshop would lead to a conversation that rewired how I understood my family and myself. What my nephew shared with me didn't shock me because it was outrageous. It shook me because it was honest and because it exposed how much I'd been missing for years. Before we get into it, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. And if you like storytime videos like this, please hit like and subscribe. It helps the channel more than you realize. That day, I was sitting in a faded canvas lawn chair in the little workshop behind my house, trying to tackle a tower of plastic tubs I'd been promising myself I'd sort one weekend soon since last spring. Sunlight came in through a dusty window and made the floating sawdust look like tiny sparks. The air had that familiar mix of smells: old wood, a hint of paint thinner, and the sharp tang of machine grease from a tool chest that used to belong to my grandfather. I've always found that space calming, not pretty, not organized, but comforting, like a museum of half-finished projects and old memories stacked in bins and taped up boxes, waiting for someone brave or bored enough to open them. I'm 52, and if I'm honest, some days I feel every year of it, especially when it comes to being the reliable one in the family. My younger sister, Rochelle, has leaned on me a lot since her divorce. I don't resent it, I love her, but the responsibility has a way of quietly collecting on your shoulders. And then there's her son, my nephew, Caleb. He's 21 now. Tall, lanky, still figuring out what to do with all those long arms and legs. He's the kind of young man who says yes ma'am to strangers and puts his shopping cart back without being asked. Thoughtful, polite, the kind of kid people assume is doing fine because he doesn't cause trouble. I'd watched him grow up in phases: little boy tearing around the yard, teenager disappearing into headphones and screens, college kid dropping by for holidays with that distant, exhausted look students get when they're sprinting through life. But if I'm being truthful, I don't think I'd actually seen him in a long time. Not the real him, just the versions life presented to me. That afternoon, I heard the back door click. I figured it was Rochelle stopping by to borrow something and forget to return it. She has that special talent. But when I turned, it wasn't my sister. It was Caleb. He stepped into the workshop and gently pulled the door shut behind him, like he didn't want the moment to echo. He gave me a small smile, polite, familiar, except it didn't reach his eyes. "Aunt Leela," he said, voice low, "do you have a minute?" Something in his tone made my hands still. I set the cardboard box down and brushed the dust off my palms onto my jeans. "Of course," I said, trying to keep it light. "What's going on?" He walked in slowly, eyes flicking around the room like the shelves and tools were brand new. Then he sat on an upside-down bucket near my workbench, elbows on his knees, fingers interlaced so tightly his knuckles looked pale. I've raised 2 kids. I know the look of someone carrying too much. "You okay?" I asked. He took a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it all day. "I didn't know who else to talk to," he said. That one sentence changed the air. The workshop felt quieter, like the walls themselves leaned in. I pulled my chair a little closer, not crowding him, just closing the distance enough to say, "I'm here." "Well," I told him, "you picked me, so you're stuck with me for a while." He nodded, still staring at the concrete floor. For a second, my mind raced through worst-case scenarios: trouble at school, debt, some breakup, a health scare, something with Rochelle. But when he lifted his head, what I saw wasn't panic. It was something heavier, softer, like grief, but not quite. He said, "I feel behind, like everyone else got a map and I'm just guessing." I stayed quiet. He swallowed and kept going. "People keep saying, 'You'll figure it out.' But when I say I'm scared, nobody actually listens. They just fix it with a sentence. He looked at me then, and there was something almost embarrassed in his expression. But you, he added, you don't do that. You don't treat everything like it needs a quick answer. That hit me harder than I expected. Me, the woman who'd spent half her life pretending she had it together. Me, the one who sometimes cried in the shower so nobody would hear. I told him you'll be fine plenty of times. I'd been guilty of the same easy, polished reassurance, and yet somehow he still saw steadiness in me. I leaned forward, resting my forearms on my knees. "Caleb," I said, "most people are lost in their 20s. They just hide it better than you think." His shoulders dropped a fraction, like a strap had loosened. He started talking then, about his classes, about choosing a major because it sounded smart, not because it meant anything to him, about sitting with friends who seemed so certain, internships, plans, futures, and wondering if he'd missed the day they handed out confidence. And then, in a voice so quiet I almost didn't catch it, he said, "I feel like I'm letting everyone down." There it was, the real weight. I reached out and rested my hand lightly on his forearm, not dramatic, just human. "You're not letting me down," I said, "not even close." He blinked fast, like he didn't want whatever was happening behind his eyes to spill over. "You're allowed to take time. You're allowed to be unsure. You're allowed to change your mind. None of that makes you a failure." He exhaled, long and shaky, like he'd been waiting for someone to say those words for years. The sun shifted, dropping lower, throwing long golden shapes across the floor. We sat in the dust and quiet for a moment without speaking. And then I noticed something. He looked like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the edge of it. I didn't know it yet, but the truth he was circling, the one he wasn't ready to name, was going to change the way I saw him and the way I saw my role in our family. The next day, I couldn't stop replaying his face in my mind. Even while I was cooking dinner, even while I was folding towels, even while I was scrolling mindlessly on my phone, I kept seeing that expression, like he'd been standing outside a door for years and finally placed his hand on the knob. I woke up early the following morning, before the sun properly climbed into the sky. The house was quiet in that soft, suspended way it gets at dawn, like everything is holding its breath. In the kitchen, a thin stripe of light cut through the blinds and landed on the table where Caleb used to sit as a kid, drawing monsters and rockets while the adults talked over his head. I made coffee and stood there listening to the refrigerator hum and a distant car start somewhere down the street. I kept thinking, he didn't tell me the whole thing. Around midday, I went outside to sweep off my back patio. Early fall had that crispness in the air, the scent of dry leaves, sun-warmed wood, and the faint dampness of earth in the shaded parts of the yard. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I heard footsteps on the gravel side path, I turned, half assuming it was my neighbor. It was Caleb again. He stood there with his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. His face looked calmer than the day before, but his eyes still carried that same quiet heaviness, like he'd slept but not rested. I smiled, careful not to push. "Back already?" I asked. He gave a small shrug. "I hope it's okay." "It's always okay, you know that." He glanced toward the old porch swing under my pecan tree. "Can we sit?" We crossed the yard and sat down. The chains creaked softly as the swing settled under our weight. Above us, leaves rustled and the sun flickered through like it couldn't decide where to land. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the same posture in the workshop, like it was the only way he knew to hold himself together. "Caleb," he said slowly, "yesterday I didn't tell you everything." I let my breathing stay steady. "That's okay," I said. "You don't have to unload everything at once." He nodded, swallowing. "I did come because I'm confused about my future," he said, But there's more. It's like I'm tired all the time. Not physically, just tired of acting. I waited. He rubbed the back of his neck and stared out at the yard like the grass might offer him words. I don't know how to explain it, he said. It's not just school, it's not just pressure. It's like I'm wearing a version of myself that doesn't fit right, and everyone thinks it looks fine, so I keep wearing it. That sentence landed in my chest with a dull thud. I shifted a little so my body faced his, giving him my full attention. You can take your time, I told him. I'm not going anywhere. A long pause passed. A bird hopped along the fence line, tilting its head as if it could sense the tension. Finally, Caleb exhaled. I've been afraid to say any of this because I don't want Mom to worry, he admitted, and I don't want anyone thinking something is wrong with me. I kept my voice gentle. I nodded slowly. I understand what it's like to question yourself, I said, and I understand how lonely it can be when you think you're the only one doing it. His mouth twitched into a small, uncertain smile. The swing rocked slightly, chains whispering, and after a moment he said, There's more I want to tell you. I didn't move. I didn't rush him. I just gave him the space to decide. But I don't think I can today, he finished quietly. That's fine, I said, when you're ready. And as he stared at the ground, I had a strange, clear certainty. This wasn't just a conversation about stress. This was about becoming someone new and trying to survive the in-between. Over the next few days, his words kept surfacing while I did ordinary things, washing dishes, paying bills, standing in line at the grocery store. I kept thinking about how many people live their whole lives performing the version of themselves they think will be accepted. Then one evening, my phone buzzed while I was sitting on the couch with a blanket over my legs and a mindless show murmuring in the background. Caleb's name lit up the screen. I answered quickly, Hey, honey. His voice was soft, careful. Aunt Leela, are you home? I am, I said. Everything okay? A pause. Then, could I come by? I think I'm ready to say more. Not everything, but more. Come over, I told him without hesitation. I'll put the kettle on. When he arrived, the sky was already deepening into that blue-gray evening color that makes everything look gentler than it is. He stepped inside and closed the door quietly behind him, like he was entering a library instead of a house. He wasn't shaking, he wasn't frantic, he just looked like someone about to walk across a bridge he'd avoided for a long time. You want tea? I asked. He nodded. I made 2 mugs and set them on the kitchen table, one herbal blend with honey for me, one plain chamomile for him. He chose the chamomile without thinking, like he'd already decided he needed calm. We sat at the small round table that had hosted years of family meals, birthdays, arguments, holiday laughter, and the kind of uncomfortable silences families pretend aren't happening. For a moment, we just listened to the quiet of the house. Then Caleb spoke. I've been thinking about what I told you, about not feeling like myself, he began. I'm listening. He stared toward the window where the first stars were starting to appear. There's something I've carried for a long time, he said, and I didn't tell Mom because I didn't want to change the way she looks at me. My chest tightened, not with fear, but with that protective instinct you get when someone is about to hand you something fragile. All my life, people have told me what kind of man I'm supposed to be, how I'm supposed to talk, what I'm supposed to like, what's normal. And I tried. I really tried to match it. His hands wrapped around the mug like it was an anchor. But it never felt natural, he said. And the older I get, the more I feel like I'm disappearing inside all the pretending. I kept my voice steady. You don't have to have the final answer tonight, I told him. You're allowed to figure yourself out loud. He blinked fast, and his jaw tightened like he was wrestling himself. I was scared you'd think I was being dramatic, he admitted. I won't, I said, firm and simple. This is real. He nodded, swallowing hard. When I was little, he said, you were the only adult who didn't push me to be louder or tougher or more something. You let me be quiet. You treated my thoughts like they mattered. And when I started feeling confused about myself, you were the person I kept imagining I could tell. That confession didn't make me uncomfortable. It made me ache with responsibility, with gratitude, with the realization that I'd been someone's safe place without even knowing it. I'm honored you trust me, I said. He sat in silence for a few seconds, then he took a breath so deep it lifted his shoulders. There's one thing I've never said out loud. I didn't interrupt. I didn't fill the space. Caleb's voice came out shaky but clear. I'm not straight. The words didn't explode, they didn't crash, they just landed, soft, heavy, and finally free. His eyes searched my face like he was bracing for impact. I reached across the table and placed my hand over his, fully this time, no hovering, no almost, warm skin, real contact. Okay, I said gently. Thank you for telling me. His breath caught. That's it? That's it, I repeated. I love you. Nothing about you telling me this changes that. His shoulders slumped in sudden relief, like his body had been holding itself rigid for years. I think I'm gay, he whispered, as if speaking louder might make it too real. And I've known for a while, but I kept hoping it would go away, or that I could just outwork it, outachieve it, outnormal it. I squeezed his hand. You can't outwork who you are, and you shouldn't have to. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob, and he wiped his face quickly, embarrassed by the tears. Don't apologize, I told him. This is a lot. He nodded. I don't want my whole life to be about hiding, he said, and I don't want to pick a future that isn't mine. I've been thinking about switching majors, too. I hate business. I picked it because it sounded safe. But what I really want is design, illustration, something creative, something that feels like me. I watched him as he said it, watched how his face looked different when he spoke about what he actually wanted, lighter, more present. You want a life that fits, I said. Yes, he breathed, like the word had been waiting for years. I want a life that fits. We sat there in the warm kitchen light, the house quiet around us, and I felt something shift, not just in him, but in me. I'd spent years believing love was mostly about protecting people from discomfort, but sometimes love is letting someone speak the truth, even when it rearranges everything. After a while, Caleb said, I don't think I can tell Mom alone. You won't, I said immediately. He looked up, eyes glassy. You'd come with me? Of course, I said. We'll do it when you're ready, and we'll do it in a way that keeps you safe. He nodded slowly, like he was letting himself believe it. That weekend, we invited Rochelle over for dinner. Nothing fancy, just roasted chicken, vegetables, the kind of meal that feels normal on purpose. Rochelle arrived with a bottle of iced tea and that tired smile she wears when she's trying to be strong for everybody. We made small talk, clinked plates, laughed at something on TV. And then after the dishes were cleared, Caleb's hands started twisting in his lap. He looked at me once. I nodded, just once, letting him know I was right there. Mom, Rochelle's expression sharpened, instantly maternal. What's wrong? Caleb swallowed. Nothing's wrong, but there's something I need to tell you. Silence filled the room, thick and tender. I'm gay, he said, voice trembling, and I've known for a long time. I didn't tell you because I was scared you'd be disappointed or that you'd think you did something wrong. Rochelle's face changed in a way I can't fully describe. Shock, worry, pain, and then something softer trying to rise through it. She put a hand over her mouth, her eyes filled. Caleb flinched, like the tears confirmed his worst fear. But Rochelle leaned forward, reaching for him. "Oh, baby," she whispered, and then she did something I didn't expect.